To taxi, first you need to make sure your tail gear is unlocked. You control it with this yellow lever here. Make sure it's in the rear position so we can turn. Then you gotta turn your parking brake off. If the parking brake handle is pulled out like this, that means it's on. So you can turn it off by pressing and releasing the brake pedals. To start moving, you just move the throttle a little bit forward. And then once you get some momentum, you can pull the throttle back a tiny bit. To turn, you just press the brake pedal of the direction you want to turn. So for example, if I want to turn left, I press my left pedal, and then I turn left like this. Now, taking off in this plane is hard because it's a World War II plane. If you have already flown World War II in DCS before, and you want to know how hard it is to take off compared to others, I would say it's easier to take off than a Messerschmitt, but harder than a P-51. If all you've flown before is jets, then it will be hard for you to take off the first couple times, but eventually you'll figure it out. Okay, the first thing we need to do is once you've lined up with the runway, you need to lock your tail wheel. You put the yellow handle forward, and we're just locking it straight so we don't flip over when we're going fast down the runway. Then you need to check your flaps. Now my plane is pretty light today, so I don't need any flaps, but if you're pretty heavily loaded, if you got a bunch of bombs and stuff, then you might want to put the flaps halfway down. You can put the flaps down using this yellow handle here. You just push it back to put it down, and then put it back to the middle to stop. The way you can tell the angle of your flaps is by looking at the wings. There will be these markings here for the angle. Now for me, I don't have any bombs or anything, so I'm just going to bring the flaps up. The next thing we need to check is the cowl flaps. The cowl flaps are these things that are popping out here that you can open up to cool the engine down. Now whenever we're taking off, we probably want to put them about halfway closed, and you can do that using this lever here. You just push it in, and you can see they're closing a little bit. So once it's about halfway, you let go, and that should be good for takeoff. The reason you don't want to have them open all the way is because once you get going pretty fast off the runway, the cowl flaps can start to cause turbulence and make it hard to fly. So to take off, what we're going to do is slowly bring the throttle, which is this big lever right here. You're going to slowly bring it all the way forward. And then once you get to about 100 miles an hour, you're going to push forward a little bit on the stick. And the reason why you do that is so we can lift the tail wheel off the ground here. Then once you're at about 110 miles an hour, you're going to pull back on the stick a little bit, and that will lift the plane off the runway. Now whenever you're bringing the throttle forward, make sure you watch this gauge here for manifold pressure, because this first red line is our maximum takeoff power, so you don't want to go past this line. Okay, so I'll demonstrate taking off now. So there's 100, so I'm going to lift the tail wheel up, and then I'm going to pull back a little bit. And there we're off the ground. So now I'm going to raise my landing gear, and you do it with this red lever here. And I'm going to bring my engine back. And you want to bring your throttle back so this needle here goes back to the green. Because if you keep it past the green for too long, you can mess your engine up. If you had your flaps down, you can raise your flaps now. And once we have brought the needle here to the green, we also need to bring our RPM to the green, and you can do that using this black lever here with the P on it for propeller. You just bring it back so the needle's in the green. The last thing we can do is push this lever forward to close our cowl flaps all the way. And that is how you take off in the P-47. Okay, now let's go over landing. So for landing, first you need to take the black handle for propeller and push it all the way forward, and then you can bring your throttle back to slow down. Now what we can do is we can take our cowl flap lever and pull it out, and we want our cowl flaps to be about halfway open. Then whenever you're less than 200 miles an hour, you can lower the landing gear. When the landing gear is down, you can lower the flaps, and for landing you can just go ahead and lower them all the way. Now whenever you're doing this, my #1 tip for this plane is make sure you do not get too slow, because this plane can easily stall in a turn if it's going too slow. So do not slow down too much until you are lined up all the way with the runway. So once you line up with the runway, you kind of just have to land by sight. After you do it the first couple times, you'll kind of just get the feel for it. You'll just kind of know how to do it. The #1 thing is to not be going too fast when you land, because you can easily start bouncing when you hit the runway. With World War II planes, you should almost kind of like stall onto the runway. Then what you do is you just gently press on the brakes to slow yourself down. Now obviously that wasn't a perfect landing. because I didn't land exactly on the runway. In fact, I actually messed up my landing gear. However, when I touched down, you could see that I was going really slow and I didn't bounce at all, which is what you wanted. The last tip for landing is that when you're coming in for landing, make sure that you don't make super drastic throttle movements like this, because if you do that, the torque from the engine can make your plane roll really easily and you can easily stall and fall down. So that was my tutorial. Thanks for watching and I'll see you later.